This is the upper body workout I use that transformed my physique. It took my back from looking like this to looking like this, and it took my chest and shoulders from looking like this to looking like this, and it's also helped many clients improve their physique along the way. In this video, I'm going to go through each exercise and the specific technique cues that you can use that have made a massive difference for me and many other clients. First exercise is a low incline barbell press. Now there's loads of different reasons for this. Some of them are backed up based on studies, some of them are just based on my own anecdotal evidence. Now, I used this when I first went into the gym. First thing I would avoid like the plague is the pre-made incline machines or like the actual pre-made benches. Normally they're on like a 45-degree angle and they're just gonna absolutely hammer your shoulders. So I'd put the bench on a 20 to 30-degree angle. You're still gonna involve a lot of front delts anyway by doing that. You're also gonna involve some side delt activation because you've got to make sure that you are stabilizing the bar from drifting forward and drifting back. I'd also recommend a barbell over dumbbells just purely because of its overload capacity. When you start getting really heavy with dumbbells, anything really north of 35, 40 kilos, they just end up being quite clumpy. Whereas you can continue to load a barbell. I think also there's another thing where there's a massive obsession at the moment. I mean, I've been running up with a Smith for quite a prolonged period of time, but I feel like when you get to a certain level and you're quite advanced, it can be definitely a benefit to use a Smith, particularly if you train on your own. But for the majority, a low incline barbell can definitely offer a lot. Next up is a seated D-handle cable fly. So all you need is a bench and a cable set up like this. Make sure that you set the cables up at around sort of the mid-chest height. The biggest mistakes I see with this are two things. Number one is just driving the hands together. So one of the main functions of the pec is to adduct the arm, move it across the body. So many people will try and touch their hands together, but when they do it, they round the shoulders forward, take all the tension off the chest. So all you need to be focusing on is driving that bicep across to shorten these 2 points. Next thing is dropping the elbows into that position to come round. What you're doing there is basically you're just putting yourself in a mechanical disadvantage position, so you won't be able to move as much load in that position. Whereas if you keep your chest up, you open up and you drive across in that position, not only will you be able to lift more, which is obviously going to provide you with more stimulus, you'll also be able to connect with your chest. Next exercise is a pull-up or a weighted pull-up if you can do them. Now, I'm not going to slate a conventional pull down on a cable. I'm not going to say that they're the worst exercise, but I do believe the pull-ups are superior. The reason why is because as you start to get heavier and heavier on a pull down, very easy to start swinging the weight and, you know, moving your upper back to try and, you know, really get leverage to get that weight down. The other thing is when you start attaching any form of weight to a belt on a pull-up, then it's one of those where you're going to be limited in terms of how much swaying and how much swinging you can do with that specific movement. The other benefit is how good it is for your shoulder joints, because the lat is going to be responsible in that position there for that full external rotation of the shoulder, which not a lot of guys can get themselves into. You know, you're in that position. I mean, I'm not going to do that for dodgy reasons, but you know, a lot of them, they can't even get into that position where they can fully externally rotate, and that's what's going to limit them with their pressing, with the shoulder pressing. It's going to limit with the shoulder growth, and also it's going to limit them with their chest pressing as well. And that's where all the niggles come from. A lot of people will say, oh, it's my rotator cuff. That might not necessarily be the case. A lot of the rotator cuff comes from the back here, and that's because of a lot of weaknesses in the rhomboid, the trapezius, strengthening those muscles, also making sure that the lats are firing as well. The thing that you need to take from this is so many people will tell you to get your chin above the bar on a pull-up. I've done that as well. It's a good tip at the end of the day. It's a good teaching cue. It can help people, especially beginners, because they're already trying to absorb a lot of information. But if you've been training for a while, then the likelihood is that you're already kind of doing that, or you're at least close. Try and make sure that you keep your chest as close to the bar as possible, because if you're out here in this position and you're getting leverage by swinging, you're just kind of gonna get as much leverage, and then you're sort of starting to do a little bit of a kipping. This exercise might come as a bit of a surprise to you. You might think, why aren't we doing a shoulder press for shoulders? Well, you've already done an incline press, so your front delts have been hit there. You have targeted some of the side delts in terms of the stability, but so many guys will do a shoulder press when in actual fact they're neglecting their medial delt here, and that's what's going to create that wide cap shoulder look you're going to create a lot of density anyway by doing a lot of chest pressing, as long as it's on an incline. If you're doing flat pressing, obviously less front delts are going to be involved. So many people will set this up incorrectly. They will put the pulley at the bottom. The issue is with putting the pulley at the bottom is all of a sudden you make it super hard at the top. Whereas if we set it up like this, we still get that stretch at the bottom there, but we also get that drop off at the top, which is going to allow us to fully contract. The only negative I would say of a dumbbell side raise is the fact that you're not really bringing in any delts here, and you're only starting to bring them in as gravity starts to work against them, and obviously you bring them in mainly at the top. Now, the benefit is if you can't get onto a cable, you know what it's like, the gym's absolutely rammed at prime time. There's no specific evidence to show, well, there's actually studies that have came out recently to show that it doesn't matter whether it's a cable side raise or a dumbbell side raise, which is quite useful really, because they both challenge the delt in different ways. But if the outcome's similar, then again, it kind of backs up what I say. Get the science, read into it, look at the research, and then back it up with what works in terms of practicality. Like, theory says one thing, what's the practicality? If it means going on to dumbbells because your workout's going to be finished 10 minutes earlier, crack on. Exercise is going to really depend on what your lower session is like the day after. If you're doing RDLs or some form of deadlift variation with your lower session, it's probably not advised that you're going to start loading your lower back a lot on the upper session. So you could use a pen lay row where you're doing dead stops at the bottom. That's going to take your lower back out of it a little bit more, rather than doing sort of a deficit pen lay row where you're obviously standing on a platform and the weight is below you. Or if you really wanted to take the lower back out the equation altogether because you do want to load it the following day, then you could do a chest supported T-bar, or even better, I personally feel like a seal row is a lot better than a T-bar. I just do, the chest pad is bigger, you can actually just be a little bit more stricter, you can get more shoulder protraction, I feel like you're less winded. There's just so many reasons why. The other thing that I forgot to mention about a seal row that I really like is that you are parallel to the ground. There's no way to get out of it, whereas what I see with people with pen lay rows is as it begins to get harder, instead of staying parallel where the shoulders are in that place and you're really flat, they end up slowly going upwards and then kind of just shrugging the weight upwards. Now, if you were to do one tricep exercise, it would be an overhead extension. I'm not throwing shame on a push down, nothing wrong with it, but there is clear evidence that shows when you challenge a muscle in its length and range like an overhead extension does, then you're going to get more out of it. Now, there's a few things. So many people will set up, they'll put the cable on like there, or they'll put it a little bit down, and they'll lean forward, and they'll sort of go into this position where they'll start pressing down, and they're using a lot of their shoulders almost as that pressing movement. Also, as the cable goes higher up, it gets easier. So we'd move the cable to around hip height, so that when you do get into this position and you start going into an overhead extension, the most important thing that we're trying to maximize is elbow flexion in that position. So we're trying to maximize as much as possible getting that bend of the elbow in that stretch position. Another thing is, unfortunately, I've only got this small rope. All the ropes are taken, but sometimes you can use two ropes. I normally have another one in my gym bag, which is a long rope. And what I see is so many people, they get in that position, and then because the rope's so short, they can only really extend out here. So if you have a longer rope, you can really extend into that position, and almost like a samurai sword as you come out. So I'd recommend, if you can, if your shoulder mobility can allow, instead of having the elbows tucked in, I bring them to the side, and imagine you've got two samurai swords. You're gonna go into that bend position, and then you're going to straighten. For the final exercise with biceps, then it's a bit of a trend at the moment, whether you can hit the long head, the short head. It's pretty much bollocks. Like, you don't really need to know that. The most important thing you need to be doing is train them through ranges. So can you train them through the shortened range, which would be with a preacher curl, and can you train them in the lengthened range with something like a basing curl? So I'm going to just finish off here with some kind of dumbbell curl, because it's mid-range. It's not a fancy exercise, just a standard curl. But as long as you are hitting those two other exercises within a pull day, for example, then you're going to hit all three of them across the program. So if your biceps aren't growing, then it's more of an execution problem rather than an exercise selection erection problem, and I'm going to cover that on a separate video, so keep your eyes out for that one. Hopefully you took something out of this, and more importantly, you can now look at your own training and know what you're doing and why you're doing it, as opposed to just copying videos that you see on social media. If you have enjoyed it and you want to see more videos just like this with evidence-based tips, then make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to fast track your results rather than spend the next 2 to 3 years trying to piece everything together, then I put a link below with information about coaching. Click on it and send me a message.